My nephew was chasing me like in prehistoric times and true infidelity story, safe version. My name is Emily Johnson, and I have always believed that life's most unexpected turns often come from the simplest of moments. Growing up in a small town in Oregon, I never imagined that years later I would be telling a story that began with my nephew, Ethan, chasing me around the backyard like we were characters in some prehistoric adventure. To someone else, it may sound like just a silly family moment, but to me, that day sparked an entire chain of realizations, emotions, and truths about family, love, and the strength we sometimes don't know we have. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and I had gone over to my sister Rachel's house to help her prepare for a family barbecue. Rachel was the kind of person who loved to host, and her husband, Daniel, was always supportive, though a little more laid back than she was. Their son, my nephew Ethan, was 7 years old, bursting with energy, and completely obsessed with dinosaurs. He had plastic raptors, triceratops, and T-Rex figures scattered across the living room floor, and I had already stepped on one earlier that day, nearly toppling over. "Emily, you're the prey, I'm the predator," Ethan shouted gleefully, holding a plastic dinosaur claw in his hand as he charged toward me. I laughed and started running across the yard. "Oh no. The raptor is after me." Rachel watched from the porch, shaking her head but smiling. "Careful, Ethan. Don't tackle Aunt Emily too hard." But Ethan had endless energy, and for the next 15 minutes, we ran in circles. At one point, I ducked behind the barbecue grill, and Ethan declared in his dramatic 7-year-old voice, in prehistoric times, there was no escape. His little imagination had completely transformed our backyard into a jungle full of dangers, and I played along as his willing prey. By the time he finally captured me, we both collapsed in the grass, out of breath and laughing. It was in that light-hearted moment that I looked up and caught Daniel watching us quietly. He wasn't smiling in the playful way Rachel was. Instead, he had an almost distant look in his eyes. I brushed it off at first, but that look would later come to mean much more than I realized. The day went on with the smell of grilled burgers and corn filling the air. Family members arrived, laughter echoed through the yard, and music played softly in the background. But as I helped Rachel carry trays of food from the kitchen, I began to notice the small cracks in her cheerful mask. She was smiling, yes, but it seemed forced at times. When Daniel asked her something, she answered quickly, almost dismissively, and then avoided his eyes. Later, after most of the guests had left and Ethan was tucked into bed, I sat with Rachel on the back porch. The night was warm, and the stars shimmered above us. She let out a long sigh and admitted something that shook me. "Emily, I don't think Daniel and I are okay," she whispered. Her words stunned me. To everyone else, they looked like the perfect family, a loving couple with a bright, playful child. But Rachel's voice cracked as she explained that their marriage had been rocky for the past 2 years. Daniel had become distant, often distracted, and though she didn't want to admit it, she suspected there might be someone else in his life. I didn't know what to say at first. My heart ached for her, and I could see the pain she had been hiding all day. "Rach, have you talked to him about it?" I asked gently. She nodded. "He always says he's just stressed with work. But I feel like I'm losing him." That night, as I drove home, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. The silly game of chase with Ethan earlier had felt so innocent, but it had unknowingly peeled back a layer of reality that was harder to face. Behind the laughter of family gatherings, there can be secrets, doubts, and struggles no one sees. Over the next few weeks, I found myself visiting Rachel and Ethan more often. I wanted to support them, to be present for my sister during what was clearly a fragile time. Ethan, of course, continued to pull me into his dinosaur games, and each time he ran after me shouting prehistoric times, I felt grateful for the innocence of childhood that shielded him from the tension brewing between his parents. But one evening, when I arrived at their house unannounced, I found Rachel sitting at the kitchen table with tears in her eyes. Daniel wasn't home yet. She confessed that she had gone through his phone and discovered messages with another woman. It wasn't just casual, it was emotional, maybe even physical. My stomach sank. "Emily, I don't know what to do," she cried. "I can't let Ethan grow up in a broken home, but I also can't pretend this isn't happening." I hugged her tightly. "You don't have to decide everything tonight. But whatever happens, you're not alone. The weeks that followed were heavy with tension. Rachel confronted Daniel, and though he admitted to crossing lines he shouldn't have, he insisted that he still wanted his family. Rachel was torn. And I, caught between supporting her and protecting Ethan's innocence, often felt overwhelmed. What struck me most was how Ethan, in his own childlike way, sensed something was wrong. He asked me one afternoon, "Aunt Emily, why is Mommy sad?" I swallowed hard, blinking back tears, and told him, "Sometimes grown-ups have hard days. But you're her sunshine, Ethan. You make her strong." Through it all, I found myself reflecting on that silly chase game. Prehistoric times, as Ethan imagined them, were full of survival, danger, and strength. And in many ways, Rachel was living her own version of that, trying to survive heartbreak, fighting for her family, and finding the strength to move forward. Months later, Rachel made the brave decision to separate from Daniel. It wasn't easy, and it broke her heart, but she knew she had to choose what was healthiest for her and Ethan. I stood by her side every step of the way. And Ethan, resilient as ever, continued to run through the yard with his dinosaurs, still chasing me like a raptor after its prey, blissfully unaware of the storm his parents had weathered. Looking back now, I realize that day when my nephew chased me around the yard wasn't just a game. It was the beginning of a story about resilience, family bonds, and the truth that even in the hardest times, laughter and love can guide us through. Rachel's journey wasn't easy, but she came out stronger, and Ethan never lost his childhood joy. And as for me, I carry that memory as a reminder that sometimes the smallest, silliest moments can reveal the deepest truths.